there are moments when the heart becomes strangely quiet. Not because love has disappeared, not because memories have faded, but because something far more meaningful has begun to take place. For the first time in a long while, they are no longer trying to force life to answer every emotional question. Instead, they are learning to sit peacefully beside those questions, without demanding immediate certainty. This message is for the soul, who has been wondering whether someone connected to your journey has started seeing your connection through completely different eyes. The answer is yes, but not in the way they expected. For a long time, they believed love was something that had to be protected through constant effort. If communication slowed down, they worried. If distance appeared, they assumed something had gone wrong. If life became uncertain, they tried harder to hold everything together. Without realizing it, they slowly confused love with control. They believed that if they thought enough, planned enough, or worried enough, they could somehow prevent heartbreak before it ever arrived. But life has a gentle way of revealing the limits of control, not through punishment, through experience. Little by little, they began noticing that the harder they tried to force emotional certainty, the more exhausted they became. One ordinary evening, while driving home after another busy day, they found themselves stopping at a red light longer than usual. Cars passed. People hurried toward their destinations. The city continued moving exactly as it always had. Yet inside, something completely unexpected happened. For no clear reason, your energy crossed their mind. Not as a painful memory, not as regret, simply as a peaceful presence. It lasted only a few seconds, but those few seconds felt different from every memory they had experienced before. There was no desperation attached to it. No need to understand it, only warmth. They continued driving, expecting the feeling to disappear. Instead, it quietly returned over the following days, sometimes while making coffee, sometimes during a morning walk, sometimes while watching the sunset after work. They noticed something fascinating. Whenever thoughts of you appeared, their heart became calmer instead of heavier. That confused them. For years, they believed meaningful connections always had to carry emotional intensity. Now they were discovering something entirely different. Perhaps the deepest connections are not recognized by emotional chaos. Perhaps they are recognized by peace. That possibility changed the direction of their thoughts. Instead of asking, "Why am I thinking about this connection again?" they quietly wondered, "What was this connection trying to teach me all along?" The answers did not come immediately. They arrived through ordinary moments. They remembered how accepted they had once felt without needing to pretend. They remembered conversations where silence never felt uncomfortable. They remembered how easily they could be themselves before fear slowly entered the story. Then another realization gently appeared. Perhaps the connection had never come into their life simply to create romance. Perhaps it had arrived to introduce them to a version of themselves they had forgotten existed. Someone more open, more honest, more emotionally alive. That realization carried incredible emotional weight, because it asked one simple question. If becoming my authentic self felt so peaceful, why did I spend so many years trying to become someone else? For several days they had no answer. Instead, they simply observed. They watched how often they still searched for approval, how often they questioned their own intuition, how often they believed they needed to earn love instead of simply allowing it to exist naturally. Each observation became another step toward freedom. Slowly, they stopped seeing love as something outside themselves. They began seeing it as a way of living, a way of speaking, a way of listening, a way of respecting both themselves and others. As this understanding deepened, something beautiful happened. They no longer imagined reconnecting with anyone from a place of emotional emptiness. If life ever brought two paths together again, they wanted it to happen because both hearts had grown, not because either heart was lonely. That difference transformed everything. For the first time, they understood that healthy love does not begin with finding the right person. It begins with becoming the right person. Not perfect, not flawless, simply honest. Honest enough to admit fears without allowing those fears to control every decision. Honest enough to express care without expecting guarantees. Honest enough to walk away from pretending and toward authenticity. Every day that honesty grew a little stronger. It appeared in the way they spoke, the way they forgave themselves, the way they treated strangers with more patience than before. Even the people closest to them noticed a quiet shift. They seemed lighter, more present, less interested in proving anything, more interested in understanding. And perhaps the greatest surprise of all was realizing that thoughts of your connection no longer created confusion. They created gratitude, because whether life eventually brought your paths together again or not, this connection had already given them one priceless gift. It had awakened the part of their heart that had been waiting for years to finally feel alive again. And now, that awakening was gently changing the way they loved, the way they lived, and the way they were beginning to imagine the future. As the days continued to unfold, they noticed something they had never experienced before. The thought of love no longer filled them with urgency. It filled them with curiosity. For so many years they believed that love asked one constant question: will this last? Now another question had quietly taken its place. Who am I becoming because of this experience? That simple shift changed everything. They stopped measuring the connection by the amount of communication. They stopped measuring it by timing. They stopped searching for hidden meanings behind every silence. Instead, they began paying attention to something far more important. How did this connection change the way they understood themselves? The answer surprised them. Before this chapter of life, they often believed that love was about being chosen, being noticed, being important enough for someone to stay. But now they realized that genuine love had been teaching them something much deeper. Real love does not begin by asking us to become more desirable. It invites us to become more authentic. That invitation had been there from the very beginning. They simply had not been ready to recognize it. As this awareness grew stronger, they found themselves becoming less afraid of emotional honesty. When someone asked how they were feeling, they no longer reached for automatic answers. They paused, they reflected, and then they answered with sincerity. It was a small change, yet it transformed their relationships. People no longer connected with the carefully managed version of them. They connected with the real person standing in front of them. That felt both unfamiliar and deeply comforting. There was another lesson waiting beneath the surface. For years they had confused emotional intensity with emotional depth. They believed that if something created constant uncertainty, it must be significant. Now they understood that true depth often feels surprisingly calm. It does not constantly demand attention. It quietly creates trust. They remembered moments connected to you that had carried this exact feeling. Simple conversations, shared laughter, long silences that never felt empty. Those memories return differently now, not to pull them backward, but to remind them what emotional safety had once felt like. Instead of asking whether the past could return, they began asking themselves another question. If I am ever given another meaningful opportunity to love, will I show up differently? The answer came without hesitation, yes. Not because they had become perfect, but because they had become aware. Awareness had softened their pride. It had replaced assumptions with curiosity. It had taught them that listening is often more powerful than explaining, and that understanding another heart begins with first understanding your own. This inner transformation influenced every corner of their life. They became more patient with family, more present with friends, kinder toward strangers. The love they had once searched for outside themselves quietly began flowing through the way they lived each ordinary day. Then one peaceful evening, another realization settled gently into their heart. Perhaps the connection between two people is not always measured by how closely their lives remain. Sometimes it is measured by how deeply they inspire one another to grow. That thought removed a burden they had carried for a long time. They no longer felt the need to force an outcome. They no longer believed that every unanswered question required immediate resolution. Instead, they trusted that whatever was genuine would never need fear to keep it alive. Fear may create attachment, but love creates freedom. That distinction became one of the greatest lessons of their journey. Because freedom does not mean caring less. It means caring without trying to control what cannot be controlled. It means allowing another soul the space to grow while continuing to honor your own path. Perhaps this was the emotional maturity life had been patiently teaching them all along. Not how to avoid love, not how to hold on to it, but how to experience it without losing themselves. As weeks passed, people around them sensed a quiet confidence they had never carried before. Their smile felt more natural. Their words became more thoughtful. They no longer seemed rushed by invisible expectations. Instead, they moved through life with a calmness that could not be explained by external success alone. It came from within. For the first time, they trusted that they were enough even on days when life offered no reassurance. That trust became the foundation for every relationship they would build moving forward, because relationships rooted in self-respect no longer ask one person to complete another. They invite two whole hearts to walk beside each other, and perhaps that is the quiet message surrounding this connection now. If your paths are ever meant to cross again, it will not be because loneliness pulled you back together. It will be because growth has gently guided both hearts toward a place where love no longer needs fear to survive. Until then, something beautiful is already taking place. They are becoming the kind of person who can love without pretending, who can give without abandoning themselves. As weeks passed, people around them sensed a quiet confidence they had never carried before. Their smile felt more natural. Their words became more thoughtful. They no longer seemed rushed by invisible expectations. Instead, they moved through life with a calmness that could not be explained by external success alone. It came from within. For the first time, they trusted that they were enough even on days when life offered no reassurance. That trust became the foundation for every relationship they would build moving forward, because relationships rooted in self-respect no longer ask one person to complete another. They invite two whole hearts to walk beside each other, and perhaps that is the quiet message surrounding this connection now. If your paths are ever meant to cross again, it will not be because loneliness pulled you back together. It will be because growth has gently guided both hearts toward a place where love no longer needs fear to survive. Until then, something beautiful is already taking place. They are becoming the kind of person who can love without pretending, who can give without abandoning themselves, who can receive affection without questioning whether they deserve it. That transformation cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It grows through ordinary mornings, quiet reflections, honest conversations, and the small decisions that slowly reshape a person's heart. One day they may look back on this season and realize that the greatest gift was never certainty about the future. The greatest gift was discovering a version of themselves who no longer needed certainty in order to love deeply, because now they understand a truth that once felt impossible. Love is not strongest when it is held tightly. Love is strongest when two hearts become free enough to choose it with honesty, wisdom, and peace. And perhaps, without either of you fully realizing it, that quiet transformation has already begun.